Welcome everybody. Today I want to share with you a new instrument I've created in Ableton. It's called Uffie, named after the singer Uffie, which I used on my video Drugs, a cover video of her song. Now this is a live vocal manipulator, which means it operates all its intrinsic details while you perform it, and I intend it to be a performative instrument. So without further ado, let's check out how it looks like in the computer. So this right here, as you see in the bottom of the screen, is Uffie. It might not look like a lot, but it's nested with millions, bajillions of things and small little details, which I will break down further. And if you see this instrument in front of me, this is the Akai MPK Mini MK2, and I'm using it to control Uffie. So this isn't really Uffie. Uffie is in the computer, and this is a physical rendition of it so that I can perform it and do my tweaks on it. So the main thing about Uffie is that it's a live vocal manipulator. So let's look at the different layers of vocals it can generate. I can lift this knob here to get this vocal sound. Now that's not really interesting, but what happens when we add a layer on top? We have a low layer as well, which is this one here.
Hello, hello, hello. Now I'm decreasing these two and I sound like a monster. Oh, I'm a monster, yeah.
Now what's causing this pitch shifting and formatting, you ask? I'm using Manipulator, a plugin developed by Infected Mushrooms. They're these two amazing producers from Israel called Erez Eisen and Amit Dudevani. So if we open up the vocal module here, you can see that I split it into leads and vocal synth. Let's check out the leads first. Inside here, I have the high, mids, and low, which these levels of the leads are controlled by these three knobs, as you saw just now. And inside each of these leads, we see the manipulator, which looks like this. So you can see for the high, I put the pitch up, and for the formant, I also tweaked it upwards. Now, there are many other functions of this plugin, but I found that this was good enough, although I am also mapping the formant and the harmonics to the joystick that I have on the left here, which means you can get things like,
Hello, my name is Baba, Baba. Hello, my name is Baba.
and all these lead chains are being separately auto-tuned or pitch corrected by Waves Tune Real Time. I chose this one because it was much more CPU saving, less CPU intensive. So speaking about the formants, I also mapped it all to a macro, which means that if we want, we can do it for different songs and we can tweak all of the formants of all three voices, low, mid, and high. Whether you want to sound more chipmunky to the right, or you want to sound more growly and deep on the left. So here's a demonstration.
What you wanna do? If you found anything, but you give me somebody new.
So these three layers already gives you a lot of flexibility, but they're all octave stacks. So what happens when I introduce the vocal synth, which gives me the ability to harmonize myself on the keyboards? Well, let's check this out now. The volume of the vocal synth is being controlled by the leftmost bottom knob here. And I'm controlling the vocal synth using only one note at a time. So how am I getting these lush stack of chords? Here's where I want to bring up Ripchord. Ripchord is a free VST plugin which allows you to play one note but generate a lot of notes. Here I've created a preset which corresponds to the C major scale, so that every time I go up a key, it's all the diatonic chords to the C major scale. If you don't know music theory, it just means that no matter what chord I play, it will always be in the right key. So as you noticed earlier on, I was only playing on the white keys so far, but I also pre-programmed the black keys. And these black keys contained chords and voicings that are richer than those on the white keys. They contain, for those of you who know music theory, more sus2s and sus4s and perhaps some 9s, these things. And I'll play them for you right now. Check out these beautiful voicings. Other than this preset, which contains mostly normal diatonic chords, I also made a jazz preset just to see how it would sound. Let's play some jazz now. Jazzy time is going. So now that we know how the Vocalsynth is getting all these lush chords, let's dive into the Vocalsynth itself and see what's happening under the hood. So here I'm going to Vocalsynth, and I'm going to open it up. This is Vocalsynth by Izotope, and right now I'm only using 3 components, the Biovox, vocoder, and CompuVox. Let's listen how each of them sound. So these components are creating a lot of different sounds. Biovox is doing a lot of breathiness, and vocoder and CompuVox are giving more of the body behind the sound. But one trick I want to share with you while I was sound designing this is that I found that the use of panning and filtering within each module really helps blend the sounds together. So in Biovox, we've got the pan right in the middle, but we've filtered all the lows out, which could be the reason why it's so breathy and high. In the vocoder, we have it panned to the left and the filter is cutting the highs out. Same thing for CompuVox, except this time it's panned to the right. And that's how I get a really white sounding, thick lushness with all 3 of them together. There are also effects after the Vocalsynth patch. I am using a nice filter just to roll off the highs. Opening it up, all will sound like this. I have a quick delay, and I also have distortion, which the mix is not a lot of. Sometimes if I want it to be edgier, I'll turn this up. So with these 4 sound design knobs, I can quickly tweak the levels of each individual layer to get a sound that I want. Perhaps say I want to not be so bright as the Uffie video and I want it to be a more mellow sound. So I'll just dial in a little bit more lows, have the mids, maybe a hint of highs, but I'll have the Vocalsynth in, maybe at maximum. And what I'll do now is go into the vocal module, into the leads, and dial the Formant back just a little bit so that I get this kind of sleepy voice.
And now when I sing, I don't wanna go back home anymore. I don't wanna go back home. I don't wanna go back home.
So you saw me tweaking the top knob here, which actually controls the reverb of the sound. Just the stock Ableton reverbs, although I am separating it into a short and long reverb. Here we've got the short one, which is only about half a second, and the long one is about 6 seconds. The interesting thing is that shorts have the lows cut off, so it brightens up the vocal, puts it in a very big space, and this one, the long one, does not. It rolls off the highs, so it gives the whole body and the tail of the reverb. Together, it can be very powerful. The knob on the right controls the crackle, which I'm not sure if I want to have this in the second version of Uffie, but the reason I have it right now is just because the original song had a crackle and going on at the back, and I'm creating that using a vinyl distortion plugin at the end by Ableton, and I'm just raising up the volume of the crackle. This vinyl distortion is also adding some saturation to the sound to make it more warm. Just a tad though, 0.08 down here. Now to my two favorite knobs, the delay knobs. I have what's known as a catch delay and a throw delay, which are terms I coined up myself, but it made sense to me. A catch delay is a long delay that I use to catch sounds or phrases that I feel, okay, could be repeated while I was performing. And you can see that when I'm catching the delay that it tends to actually go on for longer than I make it to be. If I leave this on, it's just going to go on almost forever, but I can control it because I'm using a volume mapping on the delay. I can control when I'm going to cut the delay off. If not, it could possibly go forever. 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 However, it's different for the throw delay. I got this technique from dub throws in dub music, where they throw the kind of voice that they want to put out, or an element. They'll just put this off, tweak open the send, and then close it back up. And even though you close it, the sound still continues. And how I'm doing that is I'm putting a utility plugin, which is just a gain plugin, to control volume. And instead of the volume fader at the end of this channel, I'm controlling how much goes into it. So it goes in and it continues to play. And I don't have any control over stopping it, but that's a good thing. While we're in the reverbs, I also want to point out that I got this idea from Rate Stefan in his vocal chain YouTube video. He put a pedal in his delay, and I thought that was really cool to morph the delay sound as it goes along. In my catch delay, I have a bit crusher and a flanger afterwards, the delay. And I also have an auto pan, so it's really slightly shifting every time you're hearing it. Apart from the catch delay and the throw delay, I also have a wanderer delay that is not mapped to these knobs. The wanderer delay is just there in the background to give a sense of space. So I'm gonna take the wanderer delay up. This is the wanderer delay. There's also a slap delay. Slap, which gives you a kind of a very retro sounding slap, and too much of it sounds horrible, but dial it back and it brightens up the sound a bit. It's a very fast delay that's about a 30-second note or even less. Here I put it into time function, which means I can control how fast it is, and it's only 48 milliseconds. So that's all for the vocals section, but if you remember in the videos, I was also playing a few other things while the song was going on. So I can walk you through briefly about those because I also designed it to be quite flexible. Remember just now I said I was using Ripchord to control the lush vocal harmonies of Vocalsynth. I can also control these pads with Ripchord because they're just sending MIDI chords, right? But the best thing about Ripchord is that it allows velocity to pass through, which means that right now I have in my bank A a lot of mellotron strings. And this is basically a serum patch that I created with some string wavetable, which has a very, very long attack time. And that's because I wanted it to grow. So if I play it here, it will continue to grow on, and I can actually legato it onto the next chord. And you can see I applied the same concept of mapping everything to the key of C. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And the best part about the velocity sensitivity is I can choose how bright the sound is because I mapped the velocity to the filter cutoff when I press each note. So if I press it harder, it immediately opens up. If I press it softer, it takes a while to open up. On the bank B, I have the same concept, but a bit different chords. And this time it's running a Minimoog emulation by Arturia. I just created this brass patch from like saw waves and square waves. And they are also going up the same C major scale. There's some questionable voicings now that I realize, but I might rectify that later on. Finally, on these keys on the right, in the song, I had to play these little lines that were going up there, and these are basically bubbly sounds. And I'm creating these bubbly sounds using Ableton's very own analog synth. You can do it with any synth because I'm literally just using the sine wave. So what makes it special though is this grain delay that I have here. Without it, it sounds like this. And with it, what it does is it takes that original pitch and it constantly pushes it up an octave. Here I have it pushing it up an octave every 3.48 milliseconds. And that's what makes it sound bubbly, and I just thought I'd share that with you. Here in the spray, which basically means how far apart those glitters are, is being modulated by an LFO, and it's being shifted up and down. So sometimes it sounds sparser and sometimes it sounds tighter. It just gives a lot of human element to it, which I enjoy. So if you see in the cover, you know that there are bass and drums playing in the background, but I am not actually controlling them with this instrument. Those are being played as a backing track in the cover. Just because I found that when I was performing, there was already so much to focus on here, and I wanted to put the worrying about cueing things in somewhere else. So I just let the computer do it. And I think that's a philosophy that I learned while designing this instrument, is that I feel that many electronic acts fail at creating an intimate and engaging experience because they're trying to do everything that a computer can already do. Or you're trying to be someone else. You're trying to be a lot of musicians. I find that electronic music is only really fun to watch when you're performing everything with a lot of detail, but you have a limited restraint on what you can and cannot do. And so for this vocal manipulator, it really only is for the vocalist, maybe a keyboardist. I don't expect the instrument to be an all-encompassing replacement for a band. And so when a vocalist or a keyboardist uses this instrument, they can jam with other musicians, whatever they're playing, real life acoustic instruments or whatnot. They can jam with it because it's all programmable and the scale can be easily switched on the computer. And that's where the magic happens. So it's not really trying to be cost effective. It's more about trying to increase the expression, what you can do with these vocal textures. I hope this has stretched your horizon in the possibility of live performances in the future, in the near future, hopefully. And if you'd like to have the sound of Uffie on your own projects or your own live performances, feel free to contact me below. If you take any of these ideas and apply it to your own instrument, please let me know. I would love to check it out. And if you have any ideas of how I could improve my current instrument, please let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Stay creative, and I'll see you next time.